welcome to Purpose Today. I'm your host, Dr. April Dobson, and I had some technical challenges there. I do apologize for those technical challenges. Hopefully, all of you are seeing this live. So, there was an issue with getting the live stream to work for all of the platforms. So, I do believe that I have resolved the issue, but it looks like everybody's going to have to use the new link that I had to create. But I'm very excited to talk to you all about something that's near and dear to my heart. It's ensuring that I get to help you all to align with your purpose. And if that requires a pivot, if that requires being promoted, if that requires simply redefining your career, then that is what we are going to do. So there were some excellent questions that were asked on last week. And I know that as you all are jumping on, some of you may be looking at Facebook, you may be looking at LinkedIn, but what I'm asking you all to do, and I know there's 2 YouTube channels that are out there, but if you can put your comments on the at Dr. April D. Dobson YouTube, that will help to streamline things. And so I do encourage you to share this with your colleagues, share this with your friends, and share this with everyone who can benefit from having a specific career related question answered. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and put your questions. So we're going to talk about what you can do specifically to redefine your career. And if you didn't watch the list of those 5 things, it is okay. It is all right, because I'm sure you have questions that you want to know the answers to. And today's episode of Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson is brought to you in part by the Purpose Professionals community in partnership with Purpose Today Global. Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So if you need to know a few things that you can do to ensure that you're able to redefine your career in 2026, I encourage you to pull out a pen and paper. It's going to be very helpful for you. And if you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat. So I'm going to start with just those 5 things, and I'm going to go through some of the questions that were asked in the chat on the prior discussion that we had on the episode. So I dropped my glasses. So that's one thing about having lives. Everybody gets to see everything. So one is to assess where you are. It is important to take an inventory, really make an assessment. Are you doing what you love? Are you purpose aligned? Are you following what you are passionate about? If you are not, then it's important to write down the things that you appreciate about where you are in your career, where you are in your role. I think gratitude is so important, but it's also important to identify, where you might have some areas of improvement. So take a moment to identify the ways that you're aligned, the ways that you're not. And if you're not purpose aligned, figure out what you appreciate, what you don't appreciate, and what you like about your current role and what you don't. The second one, identify how you're aligned, how you're misaligned. Third, decide your desired career. You want to make sure that you take time to really reflect on what is it that you want to do daily? What is it that you want to do to help people? How do you want to serve others? What kind of problems do you want to solve? And then you want to make sure that you're updating your job search materials and your profiles, and then that you're reviewing your applications and your networking. And you're networking to build relationships. And in building relationships, there are often ways that you can help others and ways that you can give. And usually there's ways that people find that they can contribute to you and help you with what you're doing. So I want to get into whatever questions you have. So what are your career related questions? I'm going to do my best to look at the chat to see what you all are putting. And like I said, I would appreciate if you could put the questions and comments on YouTube on the at Dr. April D. Dobson, and that way I can see the YouTube. So I see some people saying hello, so thank you so much for those of you who have said hello. But if you can put your question that you have in the chat, that would be great. I'm going to start as you all are putting your questions with some of the questions that were asked when I went through these 5 ways to redefine your career and went through those extensively. So one of the questions that came up, and these were all great questions, so thank you to everybody who already who asked a question previously to give me at least a starting point for everyone who is who's watching. So one of the questions that came from Richard, and Richard said, how do we know when a career pivot is truly aligned with purpose? Right? So if you want to know whether or not a career pivot is aligned with purpose, you have to start first by asking, the right questions. And oftentimes we ignore those deep desires that we have, the deep desire to do something that may be something that we've never done. It may be something that we've done elements of it, but it doesn't matter. Whether or not you've done it before isn't a qualifier on whether or not it's something that you can do. So think about what your deep desire is. I always say that prayer is, paramount, right? Prayer is key when we're talking about purpose because, we were all created for a specific purpose. And if you, were to have a Mercedes, or you had a BMW, or you had a Ford, or you had whatever type of vehicle you had. And maybe we're not even talking about, maybe if you want to talk about something other than vehicles, maybe you go and you buy a special appliance for your home. If you look at the instructions that came with that appliance, it's going to tell you exactly how it works and how it functions. So I think it's so important to go back to the creator. So that is how you know whether or not you are purpose aligned, taking time to really reflect prayer, and then also looking at what your deep desire is and whether or not you're doing what you have a deep desire for. So I'm looking for questions, any questions that you have specifically. Thank you so much, Olivia, for saying this is so timely for 2026 planning. Thank you. You are very welcome, Olivia. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat. So I don't see any questions yet. I'm seeing all comments. I see a question here. Olivia says, how do we know when it's the right time to pivot careers? That's an excellent question, Olivia. The way that you know that it's the right time to pivot careers is if you have a desire to pivot. Often wanting to do something different, feeling that it's time for you to do something different is an indicator that it is time to pivot. Another way that you'll know that it's time for you to pivot careers is if what you're doing, you lack growth in any way. You've ran out of ways that you can, help others to grow. You've ran out of ways to strengthen your skills, to sharpen yourself. You've grown, you're starting to, grow you're basically having to motivate yourself, like truly motivate yourself to get out of bed. You're apathetic towards what you're doing. These are ways that you can know when it is time to pivot. Another way that you can know when it is time to pivot is if you have a desire to do something and you're not doing that, right? So that is super important. So you want to make sure that you are really paying attention, right, to those desires that you have, what you're dreaming about, the goals that you have. And when you've discovered that it's the time for you to pivot, then you want to make sure, if you haven't already started, grooming people who can, be successors, in your stead, and you've put measures in place to ensure that the organization will remain successful after your departure. Those are things that you want to be sure to do. I see another question. Can these strategies, and thank you again, Olivia, for that question. Paula says, can these strategies work if someone feels stuck in their current role? Yes, Paula, absolutely. If someone feels like they are stuck in their current role, these strategies can still work for them. Um, it's all about making a decision, right? Even when you feel stuck, it's about making a decision that you are going to move beyond where you are, even if you don't know necessarily how you're going to do it. But you first start making the decision that you're going to move forward. And if you are feeling stuck, then just take an assessment on why you're feeling stuck, right? Evaluate what's making you feel stuck. Is it that you don't believe that there's any growth? Is there that you have a deep desire to do something else that you haven't pursued? Is it that you don't know how to pursue what you're dreaming about? First, finding out why you feel stuck is very important. And then I encourage you to consider having a mentor, having a coach. They're able to help you when you are feeling stuck. The other thing that you can do to help you get beyond being stuck is to really identify where it is that you would like to be and what is required for that, and identify the things that you can do today. But again, a coach or a mentor is going to be very helpful in that. It's also important to talk to someone who is successful in what you're desiring to do. And if you're not quite sure of, the best way and the direction, seeking out people who have had success in the same area that you would like to pursue is going to be very beneficial. So thank you so much for that question, Paula. So I'm not sure. Let's see. I am doing great. I hope you all are doing wonderful. Thank you all for tuning in tonight and for your engagement. And so, Matt, how long should a career transition realistically take? Let me say this, Matt. A career transition can be as quick as someone is willing to make a decision and put in the effort. I have seen people make a pivot within a matter of weeks. I have seen people make a pivot faster than that. It's all relative to how quickly you can decide that you are going to make a pivot. And it's also about what approaches and measures you're willing to take to pivot. And let me explain that. I want to make sure I unpack that for you. What I mean by that is you could be in an organization that has operations globally. You could be in an organization that has operations throughout your country. You could be in an organization that has a myriad of functions, right? And you may not be properly aligned in what you're doing, and you might discover, and let me just give an example so that I'm not being theoretical, right? So let's just say, for instance, you are someone who is in IT. You are in an IT position. You've discovered about yourself as a result of some self-discovery, as a result of some volunteer work, that you love developing people, right? So you want to make a pivot from a traditional IT role, doing cybersecurity or doing, whatever it is that you do in IT, because that's also pretty broad. And you want to get into developing people. So one of the ways that you could do that would be to identify an opportunity within your organization to provide training and mentorship and coaching. And that could happen the same day that you make a decision, right? So that's just how wide the range of options are when it comes to making a transition. It could be something that requires a lot more strategy and that takes more time. You could be in IT and have a desire to do something related to healthcare, right? And the healthcare role may require a degree and other requirements. So you may choose to pivot into an IT role supporting a hospital or supporting a healthcare organization, right? And then if you wanted to provide direct care, healthcare as a nurse or a PA or a surgeon or whatever the case may be, that might require that you advance your education. So I hope I answered your question fully in terms of how long a career transition should realistically take. So thank you so much, Matt, for asking that question. So I'm looking on David. Thank you so much for that compliment, that you appreciate this guidance and the honesty. So I see Papa Lens says, what skills matter most for career growth in 2026? So I'm going to say this. Soft skills are always important. A lot of organizations find that when you have professionals and leaders who have the right soft skills, even if they don't have all the technical skills, that is important to a lot of organizations. So if you can effectively communicate, if you can partner well with others, if you're excellent with your time management, some of these soft skills that are needed, your leadership skills, having leadership skills, all of these things are very important, not just in 2026, but these are timeless skills that are needed. In terms of other skills that are needed in 2026, I would say having an awareness and some level of application that you can use with AI, right? We are continuing to progress with the digital age. I had Dr. Iyanu Odibade as a guest on a prior Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson podcast, and we talked about how organizations should be able to use AI as a force multiplier and not to simply replace employees. They should be augmenting efforts, right? So having a knowledge and awareness and application that you can employ for AI and AI tools is another critical skill that matters for career growth in 2026. The other thing that I want to say, because I don't want to misrepresent myself, I don't want to misrepresent Purpose Today, the podcast, and I don't want to misrepresent Purpose Today Global LLC. It is important to ensure that you are aware of the skills that are required for your industry, for your desired career trajectory. That's going to be different based on the industry that you're in. Like I said before, there are some things that are important regardless of your industry. So those soft skills like communication, leadership, time management, those things are critical. Adaptability and flexibility are also key, right? But then, like I said, being able to use AI tools is also beneficial. But make sure that you're also aware of what's required for your specific industry and for what you're desiring to achieve from a professional standpoint. So excellent question. So thank you so much for that. So I'm just trying to see if I've addressed all the questions. And I see Joey also asked the same question in terms of skills that matter. So I see Faz ask, what mindset shifts are most important for career change? So one of the mindset shifts that's important for career change, and I don't want to sound cliche, but being purpose aligned is so important. So many people have the misconception that just because they have been in a career or just because they have a degree in a certain area means that they have to stay in that career because they've been in that career for 10, 15 plus years or however many years they've been in it. And some people believe that because their degree is related to what they're doing, that they need to continue doing that, and that there are not any options to pursue what their purpose to do and what they love if it doesn't my end that there is an issue with the connectivity, and I don't know if that's what you all are seeing on your end, but for me, there was a space of time that it looked like the system was buffering. So I'm going to repeat part of what I said regarding the mindset. I think everything that I said about purpose was relayed, but as it relates to a growth mindset, we need to all have a growth mindset. That's important. You know, you won't be able to achieve something that you've never done staying exactly where you are and using all of the tools and experience that you've used in the past without growing your skill sets, without growing your knowledge, without growing your experience. It's important to continue to grow. And then just remaining positive and having a positive outlook, that is key, right? Anything that you want to do or you want to achieve, it has to start with your belief and your commitment to do so. So I hope I answered that question fully for you, Faz. So thank you so much for asking that excellent question regarding the mindset shifts. Thank you so much, Joey, for saying that this is a fantastic show. I really appreciate it. I have an intent, and if you all can type for me in the chat, I know that often we have leaders who are have direct reports, and we have some leaders who don't have direct reports. I believe we all are leaders. We all have leadership on the inside of us. And so there may be some of you who are here who also supervise staff. And so I had an episode yesterday that I talked about strategies that leaders should utilize before they undergo a reorg. So I thought about doing a question and answer similar to this one next week. So if that's something that would benefit you, please just drop a yes or reorg Q&A in the chat, and then I'll know that that's something that I need to do. So thank you. And then I'm looking at, there's another question, it looks like. Foz has another question. Can professionals pivot later in their careers successfully? Foz, I love that question. Yes, 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 and yes. Professionals can pivot successfully in their careers later in life. In fact, studies show that over 70% of people in the workforce are presently seeking a job change of some sort right now. Additionally, most people do not discover their purpose until they're over the age of 40. So that is good news for anybody who is watching this, who you're later in life, you have extensive tenure with your current role or with your current company, and you have something that you're desiring to do, you're desiring to pivot. I will tell you, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but the Purpose Today podcast is just a little over a year old. I started the Purpose Today podcast just from a desire that God placed within me, and I knew nothing about running a podcast. Now, I do have prior experience in broadcasting, radio broadcasting, but that was back in the 90s before I joined the Air Force, the 1990s. So late 1990s. So I just want you to keep in mind that anytime in your career you can make a pivot. If you have a desire to pivot, then that means it's time for you to pivot. So it's important to do that, regardless of whether you're early in your career or late in your career. It's never too late for a career pivot. So thank you for that excellent question, Fazrat. Okay, so I see Jack has a question. What mistake should we avoid when planning a pivot? Well, I'll talk about a couple of mistakes that I do believe should be avoided when pivots are planned. One of the mistakes that I believe should be avoided when you're planning a pivot is something that I mentioned earlier. You don't want to make the mistake of thinking that just because you've been in a career for a certain duration, right, that you can't pivot or you can't shift. Also, don't think that that just because you've never done what you're dreaming about doing, that you're not qualified. There are so many transferable skills that can be used from one career to another career. And I think it's all about really having the right information and the right insight, so that you can tap into the skills, gifts, and talents that you have. So, great question. And one more mistake that I want to talk about, Jack, that should be avoided when planning a pivot, and that is delaying. Now, I'm going to tell you all a story. So, for those of you who don't know this, I served in the United States Air Force for 11 years. And I loved being in the Air Force. But the career that I was in Intel. I was getting awarded, I was getting recognized, I was getting accolades, but there was something missing. I knew deep down it did not align. And early in my Air Force career, I had the desire to switch to a different career. And I let's just say, I asked the advice of different people, and I'll just be transparent. I talked to my husband at the time about it. We're since divorced, and he did not want me to retrain. So I gave up the opportunity to retrain, and I missed that window. So in the Air Force, you only have a certain window of time to retrain. Even if you've never been in the military, this is relevant for you. Just hold on to the story. So I was locked out of retraining because I missed the window, but I was eligible to apply for a special duty assignment. In doing that, I discovered that I loved HR. And I promised myself that whenever I left the Air Force, I was going to pivot careers. Well, fast forward, that was early in my career, like first few years of my career. I didn't pivot until after my 11-year Air Force career came to an abrupt end. Now, I'm going to say that in retrospect, it was a blessing in disguise because it forced me to do what I had been dreaming about for many years. And many of you could be dreaming about doing something different, but like me back then, way back then, and it's been over 16 years now since I made a pivot. So let me just make that So the connection dropped. So another downside to do So I may not have had a chance to answer all your questions, and I do apologize that I had technical issues on my end. So I was just trying to ask if anyone wanted me to do a part three because I'm going to start winding up here. I just want to make sure that I answer the questions that I can answer. It looks like someone asked, how can we prepare for new opportunities? And one way that you can prepare for new opportunities is always ensuring that you are doing things and taking actions to develop yourself. That is both formally and informally. You can develop yourself in so many ways. YouTube makes so many videos and so much information available to you. In fact, just resources in yourself to grow and to develop. That is extremely, extremely important. Just continuing to grow and develop. So through reading books, through mentorship, through coaching, through formal degree programs, through certifications, just always continue to grow and develop yourself. Now, I don't see any more of the comments, and I think it's because of the technology challenges that I was having with connectivity. So it cleared all of the comments. So I'm just trying to find another way to access those questions. And so, what I would like for you all to do, if I did not get to your question tonight, please feel free to copy and paste it back in the chat, or feel free to connect with me and I will do my best to answer your question for you. If you want a part three of this, because like I said, I'm going to go ahead and wind down, then I do encourage you to just type part three in the chat. I'm just trying to see if I can get to the questions that I missed in the time that I was having the issues with connectivity, because I want to make sure, because I said that I would answer your questions tonight, that I answer all the questions that were at least posed. So just bear with me and I will do the best that I can just to try to see those questions, just to make sure that I'm able to answer them before I end this live. And I do thank you all for joining on today and from wherever you're joining from. And I do appreciate all of the engagement on today. So I did answer Jack's question about the mistakes to avoid. I answered, okay, so Allie has a question, how important is mentorship during a career shift? I believe that mentorship is critical. The reason that it's critical is that you can save yourself time, energy, resources, money by speaking with someone who has already been successful in what you're desiring to do. They can give you strategies and specific steps that you can take, or other people who you can talk to, so that you don't have to waste your time on something that may not be as effective. I'm so grateful for all of the mentors who I have had during my lifetime who have helped me in so many ways. And when I was a presidential management fellow, I had people who were prior PMFs who gave me insight on things that I needed to do regarding rotations, regarding mentorships, regarding informational interviews that I had not considered. So mentorship is key. So you want to have a good mentor, a good coach, several mentors. I say 2 to 3 mentors is ideal. Bradley says, this is motivating me to rethink my career goals. So thank you, Bradley, for sharing that insight. I'm so glad that this has motivated you. You're very welcome, Lori. I see that you said thank you for empowering professionals to pivot with purpose. And then I see that it looks like Ian Rick says, can personal branding really impact career transitions? You know, I really am so happy that you asked that question. Yes, personal branding can impact career transitions in both positive and negative ways. You can have your brand speaks even when you're not communicating with someone, right? So you want to take a look at what you have on LinkedIn, what you have on Facebook, what you have on all your social media platforms, and also just Google your name and see what comes up, right? Because some employers, I should say most employers, will be doing that, right? Recruiters, hiring managers, people who are involved in the process. So make sure that your brand precedes you in a good way and that your name precedes you in a good way, right? So some of the things that you can do to ensure that you're representing yourself well, even when you're not speaking with anyone. I know a lot of people don't like to toot their own horn. They don't like to put information of their accomplishments out there, but oftentimes hiring managers and recruiters are looking for that when they're trying to make a decision of who to interview, of who to select. So if you've been recognized, if you've won awards, if you have volunteered, make it a practice to update your LinkedIn profile, not just with accomplishments, but that you're also posting content. You would not believe how many people don't maximize the value of LinkedIn and other professional platforms. So if you had the pleasure of going to volunteer at an organization and you all had things that you were able to achieve collaboratively through volunteering, then you need to consider posting something related to that. If you were recognized and received, I'm going to use an example that happens with people in the military. You received NCO of the Year, or you received, for the Air Force, they call it Airman of the Year, right? And you don't even post that anywhere on LinkedIn. So you want to make sure that you're putting what's showing a lot of the value that you've brought, a lot of the solutions that you've solved, that you're really ensuring that that is available. Another thing, if you have published a book or you've published articles, you should be announcing that on LinkedIn and on your other profiles. And so how you can prepare now for opportunities in 2026. One of the things that you can do, and that's the last question that I'm going to take today. If I somehow missed a question, please do type the word missed and then copy and paste your question so that I can answer it. But that'll be the last new question. So in terms of preparing, continuing to develop yourself, continuing to take an opportunity to build relationships, not for the sake of gaining something, but for how you can give, for how you can partner with others. So, and then also taking inventory on what's required for where you are heading, ensuring that you have what you're dreaming about, your goals, that those are written down, and you're taking actionable steps each and every day towards what you're dreaming about. Now, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to view today, for taking the time to ask all of the wonderful, engaging questions. If I missed your question, please forgive me for missing your question. But if you want a part 3, because my connection dropped, just drop part 3 if you want me to answer more questions. I also said in the offset, if you want me to do a Q&A for leaders about so that you can ask questions about things to do before you initiate planning for a reorg, then type reorg Q&A in the chat, or just type a yes in the chat and I will know what you were referring to. So thank you all for tuning in today. There is an opportunity for a complimentary coaching and consulting interest Zoom meeting. You could do it by Zoom. If you're in the US, you can do it by phone. But I will drop that link in the chat if you would like that complimentary session. It's just a 15-minute session, and I will put that in the link in the chat for you. I'll put the link there in the chat. And if for whatever reason there was something that stood out for you today that you want to ensure that someone walks away with that, what you've gleaned, then I would just encourage you to drop it in the chat of something that you gleaned from today's Q&A. And I want to thank you all again for taking time to view today and to view live. I know that this episode was possible because you all took the time to come, to engage, to ask your questions, and I do appreciate you all participating in this Q&A. I will make it a point to do more of these, and so I'm just going to drop that link in the chat. So thank you all for viewing. I so appreciate all of you for taking the time to watch today's episode, our Q&A, Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson podcast. I encourage you to remain purposed today and every day. And I encourage you, if you've been dreaming about doing something, I encourage you to start taking those steps today to do what you are dreaming about. You know, it's always a great time to pursue purpose. It's always a great time to align with purpose. It's always a great time to really do, you know, what's in your heart and what you've been dreaming about. And I appreciate the fact that I've had an opportunity to answer all the questions that you all have asked on today. This has been super fun. If you are thinking about a career pivot and you still want someone to, help you with a strategy, like I said, that complimentary coaching and consulting interest Zoom link for scheduling is in the chat. I do also want to share that Purpose Today Global does offer a From Unfulfilled to Unstoppable masterclass that could be helpful for you in achieving success with a specific strategy to go from where you are if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling unfulfilled. I encourage you to utilize the link in the chat for that. So once again, I do thank you all for the excellent questions. And if you aren't subscribed, I do encourage you to hit the subscription bell to receive notifications. Follow me at Dr. April D. Dobson for more insights of being purpose aligned in your career, for more career planning and management and professional development and leadership insights. So thank you all again for joining. We have more insightful episodes that are coming up. And as you are subscribed, you're able to receive early notifications of what is upcoming. So thank you all again for tuning in. I hope you all have an amazing weekend, and I do look forward to seeing you all again on another episode of Purpose Today. Thank you again, and for those of you who are watching from the East Coast, have a wonderful evening, and just from around the world. I don't know if any of our folks who are watching globally, I think for some of you it is already early Friday morning. So have a wonderful, restful night and an amazing